Emma Carter was gathering her papers into a neat stack when she heard the steady footsteps behind her. It was late on a Friday, and the office was nearly empty. The computers were shutting down one by one. Lights dimming as her coworkers hurried out to catch dinner plans or weekend flights. She was expecting the quiet ride home, maybe a cup of tea, nothing more. But when she turned, she saw Daniel Hayes, her boss. Standing just a few feet away, his usual calm expression shadowed by something she couldn't name. "Emma," he said. His voice, even though his eyes gave away a hint of hesitation. "Could you stay after work for a while? I need to talk to you." Her hand froze on her bag strap. Stay after work. With Daniel. That was unexpected. She had worked under him for a year now. And while he was always respectful and professional, he rarely asked for personal time. He preferred boundaries at least. That was what Emma believed. She tried to smile lightly, though her heart ticked faster in her chest. "Of course," she said softly, her curiosity rising. The office, once full of chatter and typing, had grown so still that every sound felt louder. The elevator dinged, doors closing on the last group of employees heading out. Phones stopped ringing. Printers quieted. Soon, it was only Emma and Daniel left in the wide open space of their marketing firm's floor. Daniel didn't return to his office right away. He lingered by her desk for a moment, almost as though he wanted to say something else, but held it back. His hands were in his pockets, his shoulders carrying a weight she had never noticed before. Emma studied him carefully, noticing the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes. The kind of tiredness that came from more than work. She wondered if this was about a project. Perhaps some urgent campaign they needed to save, but his tone didn't sound like business. It sounded personal. And that thought unsettled her more than anything. She finished packing, sliding her laptop into its case, and then waited. Daniel gave her a small nod, gesturing toward his office. "Let's talk inside." The walk down the hall felt longer than usual. The glass walls reflected their figures, her small frame walking behind his tall, composed one. Her thoughts rushed. Was she in trouble? Had she made a mistake? Or was this something entirely different? Inside his office, the usual order of things seemed oddly intimate in the quiet. His desk, always stacked neatly with reports and files, now looked less like a workstation and more like a barrier between two worlds. Yet tonight, he didn't sit behind it. Instead, he moved one of the chairs closer and gestured for her to sit across from him, as if he wanted to meet her eye to eye, not as a boss, but as a man speaking to someone he trusted. Emma's pulse picked up again. She lowered herself into the chair, clutching her bag tightly on her lap. The silence pressed in, broken only by the hum of the city lights shining beyond the window. She had never been alone in this space with him before, not like this. Not without the distraction of charts, deadlines, and staff meetings. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his elbows on his knees, his gaze steady but softer than she expected. "I know it's late," he began, his voice measured, "but I didn't want to wait until Monday." Emma's brows furrowed, the words slipping through her like a ripple. Not wait until Monday. Whatever this was, it had weighed on him enough that he couldn't put it off. She nodded gently, encouraging him to continue, though her chest felt tight. He hesitated, as though he was considering each word before giving it shape. His usual confidence, the certainty that made him such a strong leader, seemed replaced with something more delicate. Something she couldn't quite name yet. "You've done more than just meet expectations this year," he said, his eyes fixed on her, holding her attention firmly. "You've shifted things. The projects, the energy here, even me. I've noticed." Emma blinked, startled by the unexpected warmth in his tone. A compliment from Daniel. He was not the type to hand those out freely. Praise from him usually came in precise, practical notes: good numbers, strong data, effective design. Never words like these, layered with something unspoken underneath. Her throat felt dry. "Thank you," she murmured, unsure how else to respond. But even as she spoke, she felt something stir in her. For months, she had tried to ignore the quiet admiration she carried for him, not just for his sharp mind or the way he guided the team, but for the glimpses of gentleness she caught when he thought no one was watching. how he asked about the intern's college exams, how he remembered small details about birthdays, how he stayed late not just for work, but to ensure others didn't fail under pressure. She had noticed those things, even when she told herself she shouldn't. He was her boss. That line was thick, clear, and not meant to be crossed. Yet tonight, with the office silent and his voice softer than she had ever heard it, that line felt blurred. Emma shifted slightly in her chair, her hands tightening on her bag. She didn't know what he was about to reveal. But she knew with certainty this wasn't about work anymore. The clock ticked on the wall. The city's glow bathed the room in gold. Daniel's expression held a weight that made Emma's chest ache. Something was coming, and though she didn't know whether it would frighten or warm her, she knew it would change the way she saw him forever. For the first time that evening, Emma wondered if this moment would be the beginning of something she had secretly longed for, or the start of a complication she wasn't ready to face. And as Daniel's eyes lingered on hers, steady, unwavering, the air between them thick with meaning, Emma realized that whatever he was about to say would not be ordinary. It would shift her world in ways she hadn't expected when she started packing her bag just minutes earlier. Daniel closed the office door behind them, and the faint click echoed in the quiet. Emma sat across from him, her bag still resting on her lap, her hands folded tightly as if bracing herself. He didn't sit in his usual seat behind the desk where he would normally project authority. Instead, he pulled a chair forward until he was directly in front of her. It felt unusual, almost disarming, as if he wanted no walls, no roles. Just two people speaking. He drew a slow breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know this may seem out of the blue," he began, his voice lower than usual, "but I've been thinking about this conversation for a long time." Emma blinked, the words catching her off guard. Out of the blue was right. Nothing about this moment felt ordinary. She leaned forward slightly, her curiosity winning over her nerves. "I don't understand," she said gently. "Is this about work? About the project?" Daniel shook his head almost instantly. "No, this isn't about numbers or deadlines. It's about something more." He paused, pressing his hands together as though steadying himself. "It's about you." Her chest tightened. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unsure what to say. Daniel Hayes. Her boss, the man who rarely allowed his emotions to show, was sitting across from her, speaking in a way that felt startlingly personal. He continued, his words careful but weighted. "You've only been here a year, Emma, but in that time you've changed so much about this place. The way the team works, the energy in the office, the results we've achieved. You have this presence, and it's not just your skills. It's you." Emma's breath caught. She was used to professional compliments, but not like this, not with this much feeling behind them. She shifted uneasily, her mind racing, trying to balance what was happening with the strict boundaries she had always believed were there. Daniel leaned back slightly, though his eyes softened as he watched her. "I know I've always seemed distant. That's deliberate. I've kept myself focused on work because it's easier that way. But the truth is, for months now, I've felt something I never intended to feel, something I couldn't ignore any longer." The words struck deep. Emma's heart pounded, a mix of shock and something warmer, something she didn't dare name yet. She had admired him silently, respected him deeply, but never imagined he might feel something beyond professionalism. "I don't expect you to answer me right away," Daniel added quickly, his tone earnest, almost vulnerable. "I just couldn't keep this locked inside anymore. I needed you to know." Emma stared at him, her lips parting slightly. She wanted to speak, but her thoughts tangled. She remembered all the late nights when Daniel stayed behind, making sure projects were perfect, the subtle kindness he showed to new staff, the way his laugh rare as it was lit up the room when it escaped. She had noticed it all, even when she told herself she shouldn't. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "Say what's real," Daniel urged gently, "even if it's not what I hope to hear." His words stirred something in her chest. Emma lowered her gaze for a moment, searching herself, then lifted it again, her eyes shining faintly. I thought I was the only one. That whatever I felt was mine to carry alone. Daniel's expression shifted relief, surprise, something close to joy flickered across his face. He exhaled deeply, as if the weight of months had finally lifted from his shoulders. You're not alone, he said softly. Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything unspoken. The world outside the city, traffic, the glow of streetlights, the schedules waiting for tomorrow faded into the background. In this office, at this late hour, there was only the two of them sitting in a truth neither had dared admit until now. Emma's heart beat quickly, yet she felt a strange calm beneath a rush of emotions. For so long she had hidden the quiet admiration. The moments when her eyes followed him, the way her pulse quickened when he smiled in her direction. Now it was no longer a secret. It was shared. But with that relief came fear. She hesitated, her voice trembling when she spoke again. Daniel, what happens now? This isn't simple. You're my boss. They might not understand. He nodded slowly, his gaze steady. No, I thought about every reason why I should never say this. I tried to bury it. But in the end, pretending seemed more dishonest than the risk of speaking. And I'd rather you know the truth than keep wondering what I see every time I look at you. Emma's chest ached at his honesty. She had imagined confessions like this in fleeting daydreams, but hearing it in reality was overwhelming. She pressed her palms together, trying to hold on to her composure, even as emotions swirled wildly within her. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm scared of what this could mean. So am I, he admitted, his tone low, sincere. But I'm more afraid of living each day in silence, watching you walk into this office, and never letting you know what you mean to me. The confession lingered in the air like a fragile glass, shimmering but breakable. Emma felt her throat tighten, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. She wasn't used to this level of honesty. Not from him. Not from anyone in this place where everything was supposed to be about targets and results. And yet she couldn't deny it. She had wanted this moment. Maybe not like this. Maybe not so suddenly. But she had wanted it. She leaned forward, her voice trembling but clear. Then I guess we both know where we stand. And maybe that's enough for tonight. Daniel studied her for a moment, his gaze soft but filled with quiet determination. He didn't push, didn't demand answers she couldn't give yet. He only nodded slowly, as if to say he understood that he was willing to wait. Emma sat back, her heart racing, but lighter somehow. The room felt different now. No longer just an office, but the place where walls had finally fallen. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew one thing with certainty. This night had changed everything. For the first time, Emma left her fear aside and allowed herself to meet his eyes fully. What she saw there wasn't the cool, untouchable boss everyone admired. What she saw was a man who had finally let himself be human with her. And that realization sent a quiet warmth through her chest. A flicker of something fragile yet undeniable. Something that felt like the start of a story neither of them had expected to write. Emma sat frozen in her chair, her pulse thundering in her ears. Daniel's words lingered, echoing louder than the ticking clock on the wall. His confession had cracked open something inside her, something she had carefully locked away. She wanted to believe this was real. But part of her feared what it meant for both of them. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to find her voice. Daniel, I don't know what to say to you. This feels impossible. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on hers, his tone carrying an urgency she had never heard before. Don't tell me what feels proper. Don't tell me about rules or what others will think. Just tell me what's in your heart. The demand wasn't harsh. It was raw, vulnerable. For the first time, Emma saw him not as the composed leader who guided the company with precision, but as a man standing on the edge of hope and fear. Her lips parted, but words caught in her throat. She lowered her eyes, trying to gather the courage she wasn't sure she had. Finally, she whispered, I've tried to hide it. I told myself it was only admiration, only respect. But it wasn't. I felt more Daniel. I just thought you would never notice me that way." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument, any long speech. Daniel exhaled, his shoulders dropping, his whole body loosening as though a chain had fallen away. His expression softened into something she couldn't quite name: relief, joy, and disbelief all at once. "I noticed," he said firmly, "from the very beginning, and I tried to fight it. Every day I told myself it wasn't right. But every time I saw you, every time you walked into a room, I lost that battle." Emma's chest tightened. She looked at him, at the man who had always seemed unreachable. Now sitting only inches away with nothing to shield his feelings. She wanted to let her heart leap into his arms, but the weight of reality held her back. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "If anyone found out, they would question everything. They'd say it's wrong, that we're crossing lines we shouldn't." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I know the risks. I know the whispers that would come. But Emma, when I think about losing this chance, losing you, it feels like a greater risk than all the rest." His words struck deep, pulling at the fragile walls she had built around herself. For months she had buried her emotions, forcing herself to smile through meetings and late nights, pretending her heart wasn't drawn to him. Now the truth stood between them like fire, dangerous, but impossible to ignore. Emma looked down at her hands, twisting them together. "This could destroy everything we've worked for," she said quietly. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "Or it could be the one thing worth everything we've built. Don't you see? I don't want to live a life where I watch you from a distance, pretending none of this is real." Her breath shivered as she lifted her gaze back to him. His eyes were unwavering, filled with conviction, and she knew in that instant that he meant every word. He wasn't speaking like her boss. He wasn't speaking like a man protecting his image. He was speaking like someone whose heart had finally broken free of all restraint. Her voice trembled when she asked, "And what if we're wrong? What if we're just caught in a moment, and it falls apart?" Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile, tinged with sadness, but also determination. "Then we'll know we tried. But Emma, I can promise you this isn't just a moment. I've spent too many nights convincing myself to stay silent, too many days trying to see you only as a colleague. If it was just a moment, it would have passed long ago. It hasn't. It's only grown stronger." Emma felt her chest ache with a mixture of fear and longing. She searched his face, every line, every shadow, and found no trace of doubt. For a man who was known for his restraint, for his caution, Daniel was offering her his heart with absolute clarity. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. She didn't want to fight what she felt anymore, but she was afraid of what lay ahead. Slowly, almost as if testing her own strength, she whispered, "Then maybe I've been waiting for you to say this all along." Daniel inhaled sharply, his eyes widening for a fraction before softening into warmth. He reached across the small space between them, his hand hovering as if asking permission. Emma hesitated, then placed her hand gently in his. The simple touch sent a rush of emotion through her veins, a confirmation of everything they had both been holding back. The world outside felt far away. The office walls, the glow of the city beyond the glass, the ticking clock, all of it faded into the background. In that moment, there was only the fragile honesty of two people finally standing at the edge of something greater than fear. Emma let out a shaky laugh, half in relief, half in disbelief. "I can't believe this is happening. I never thought you'd see me like this." Daniel squeezed her hand, his voice firm but gentle. "I've seen you clearly since the first day you walked into this office. I just never let myself admit it." Her heart swelled, caught between hope and uncertainty. She knew this wasn't the kind of story that ended neatly. There would be questions, doubts, challenges ahead. But she also knew that in this moment, with his hand holding hers, she felt more alive than she had in years. She drew in a deep breath, her voice quiet but certain. "Then I guess we're not standing alone anymore." Daniel's expression softened into a smile that reached his eyes, a rare sight she had only glimpsed in fleeting moments before. "No, we're not. The air between them changed lighter, yet deeper, filled with the weight of all they had just confessed. For Emma, it felt like the ground beneath her feet had shifted, not in a way that left her unsteady, but in a way that promised something new, something fragile yet worth holding on to as the night deepened. Emma realized that whatever challenges awaited them outside these walls, tonight had given them something undeniable. Their hearts had spoken the truth neither of them could ignore, and though uncertainty loomed like a shadow, Emma felt something stronger rise within her, the quiet, trembling courage to step into whatever future this moment had begun. The office felt different now. It was no longer just a place of deadlines and long hours. Tonight, the walls seemed to breathe with the weight of what had just been said, as if the room itself had been waiting for this moment between them. Emma stood slowly, her heart still racing, and Daniel rose too, the distance between them closing with every step. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, charged with everything that had finally been admitted. The hum of the city outside the tall windows filled the quiet, lights glowing across the skyline, as though the world was listening in on their secret. Daniel broke the silence first. His voice was low, steady, but filled with emotion. "Emma, I'm not asking for anything tonight. Not promises, not decisions. I just needed you to know the truth, that what I feel isn't passing, it's real." Emma's throat tightened as she listened. She hadn't expected this, not in 1,000 years. She had walked into work today thinking it was just another Friday, that she would go home tired and ordinary. But now her world had shifted, tilted in a way she couldn't undo. Her chest ached, but not from fear, from something softer. Something she had denied herself for too long. Her voice trembled as she answered, "You've shocked me, Daniel, but in the best way. Because all this time, I thought I was alone in what I felt. I thought I was foolish for even letting myself hope." His expression softened at her words. He stepped closer, slow and careful, as if giving her every chance to pull away. But Emma didn't move. Her heart pulled her forward, urging her to accept what her mind still struggled to process. "Emma," he said quietly, his eyes locked on hers, "you were never foolish. You were the one thing I couldn't ignore, no matter how hard I tried." She felt her chest tighten again, tears threatening to fall. She blinked them back, smiling faintly through the blur. "So what do we do now?" she whispered. Daniel paused, his gaze steady but thoughtful. "We take it one step at a time. We don't have to figure out the world tonight.
Damn.
All that matters is that we're honest with ourselves and with each other." His words steadied her in a way she didn't expect. Emma nodded, realizing that he wasn't rushing her, wasn't demanding answers she wasn't ready to give. He was simply offering his truth and asking her to carry hers alongside it. It was fragile, but it was enough. Her hands tightened around the strap of her bag. She wanted to say more, to capture everything inside her heart, but words felt too small. Instead, she let out a shaky laugh, trying to release the pressure building in her chest. You know, I came in this morning just worried about finishing that campaign pitch I never imagined I'd leave with this." Daniel chuckled softly, a rare sound that made her heart swell. "Neither did I, but sometimes life refuses to wait for the perfect moment." The warmth in his tone eased the tension between them. Emma finally let go of her bag, setting it down on the chair behind her. Her hands were free now, and she realized she wanted them to be. Daniel watched her carefully, his own hand moving slightly as if reaching, then pausing. She took a slow step forward, closing the last bit of space between them. When their hands finally met, it wasn't rushed or dramatic. It was simple, steady, and real. His touch was warm, grounding her in the storm of emotions swirling inside. Emma looked up at him, her voice soft but certain. "I'm scared of what's ahead, but I don't want to run from this." His hand tightened gently around hers. "Neither do I." In that moment, something shifted quietly, powerfully. They weren't just boss and employee anymore. They were two people standing on the edge of something new, something fragile but alive with possibility. Emma felt her heart lift, light and heavy at once. For months, she had carried her feelings in silence, thinking they were one-sided, foolish. Now, that silence was broken, and in its place stood the beginning of a story she hadn't dared to dream. Daniel glanced toward the window, the city stretching wide and endless beyond the glass. "Whatever happens, Emma," he said softly, "I want you to know this night will always matter to me. Because it's the first time I stopped hiding from myself." Her eyes stung again, but she smiled through it, her voice steady now. "And it's the first time I realized I wasn't alone." They stood there, hand in hand, as the office lights hummed gently above them. The world outside continued rushing. Unaware of the quiet turning point happening in this small glass-walled room. Eventually, Emma picked up her bag again, but this time with a different weight in her chest. She wasn't leaving the office as just an employee heading into the weekend. She was leaving as someone who had found courage in the most unexpected place. At the door, she paused and looked back. Daniel was still standing there, watching her, his expression both tender and resolute. For a moment, she didn't want to leave. But she knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. She offered him a small smile, the kind that carried both hope and promise. "Good night, Daniel." His lips curved into a soft smile of his own. "Good night, Emma." As she walked out into the quiet hallway, her steps felt lighter than they had in months. The air seemed fresher, the future less certain, but strangely brighter. She didn't know what the next week, the next month, or even the next day would bring. But she knew she was no longer carrying her heart alone, and that was enough. That night, as Emma drove home through the glowing streets of the city, she couldn't stop replaying his words in her mind. They were raw, unpolished, vulnerable, and they had changed everything. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of what she felt. For the first time, she believed that maybe the best surprises in life didn't come from careful planning, but from moments when honesty broke through the walls people built. And as she pulled into her driveway and sat quietly in the dark car for a moment, Emma smiled to herself. She had gone to work expecting an ordinary Friday. But she had left with something extraordinary, the start of a story that neither she nor Daniel had seen coming, but both of them had needed all along.